The deepest betrayals are rarely the ones that roar. They don't always come with screaming, slammed doors, or broken promises shouted in the heat of an argument. The most devastating kind comes quietly, from the very person you trusted most, the woman you chose to stand beside, the one you believed in, the one you protected. You didn't choose her because she had more than anyone else. You chose her because you saw something real, something worth building with. You invested your time, your loyalty, your presence, and your love into her. And yet, she's the one who cut the deepest. Not because you lacked value, but because you carried too much of it. Not because you were weak, but because your strength reminded her of everything she wasn't ready to face within herself. Most men don't want to hear this truth. They cling to the idea that if you love hard enough, give enough, protect enough, then you'll be rewarded with loyalty in return. But that's not always how it plays out. Sometimes, the stronger you are, the more you threaten her comfort zone. Sometimes, the more disciplined, focused, and evolved you become, the more she feels exposed. And exposure makes people lash out. It makes them resent the very light that shines on their darkness. That's what makes the quiet betrayal so cutting. She didn't leave because you were lacking. She betrayed because you forced her to see her own mediocrity, and instead of rising to meet it, she punished you for it. That kind of pain changes a man. It makes you question your worth, your time, even your love itself. But the truth is simple, you didn't fail her. She failed herself. And she made you the target of a storm she never had the courage to face. You gave her everything you had. Not half your heart, not pieces of yourself, but all of you. Your time, your loyalty, your presence, your guidance, it was all laid down as a foundation she could build with. You weren't careless with her. You were intentional. You showed up when you didn't have to. You listened when you were tired. You poured into her when you could have kept it for yourself. You gave her the version of you that most men never even let the world see. And yet, all of that wasn't enough. Because standing next to you meant standing next to greatness, and greatness has a way of making the unprepared feel small. Instead of letting your strength inspire her, it intimidated her. Instead of admiring your elevation, she resented it. She didn't understand that you weren't competing with her, you were leading both of you forward. But when someone hasn't faced their own insecurities, your progress doesn't look like growth to them, it looks like a reminder of everything they've been avoiding. And that reminder stings. She started searching for flaws where none existed. Picking at your calm, twisting your consistency into arrogance, calling your discipline control. Not because those things were true, but because her ego needed protection. You didn't belittle her, but your excellence did. You didn't drag her down, but her refusal to rise made her see you as the enemy. And when a person can't rise with you, they often choose the only option their pride allows, trying to pull you down instead. That's the reality of being a man who keeps growing. You either inspire those around you to rise, or you become the mirror they'd rather shatter than face. And sadly, she chose the latter. Women often say they want a strong man, a leader, someone steady enough to protect them from the storms of life. But the moment they meet one, reality shifts. Because strength doesn't just provide safety, it exposes truth. And truth is not always easy to look at. Your presence became a mirror she couldn't escape. It reflected her lack of discipline, her emotional volatility, her unhealed wounds. Every time you held your ground, every time you stayed calm instead of spiraling with her, she saw the difference between your stability and her chaos. And instead of respecting it, she began resenting it. You didn't have to call out her flaws. You didn't have to criticize or compare. Simply by existing as a man rooted in discipline and self-control, you forced her to face parts of herself she had been running from. That mirror grew heavier with each interaction. Your silence, your composure, your refusal to be dragged into petty drama, it all became unbearable for her because it highlighted her lack of growth. And rather than facing that reality, she twisted the narrative. Your peace became indifference. Your standards became oppression. Your leadership became arrogance. None of these accusations were true, but they protected her ego from the sting of accountability. To acknowledge your strength would mean admitting her weakness. And when someone isn't ready to grow, they will distort everything around them to avoid facing themselves. That's why she began to fight you, not because you were failing as a man, but because you were succeeding too well. You were the mirror she couldn't face, the reminder she couldn't silence. And when the truth feels unbearable, lies become the only shield left. What most men don't realize is that betrayal doesn't always come from lack of love, it often comes from lack of courage. She may have loved you in her own way, but love without courage is fragile. It bends under pressure, it collapses when tested. She couldn't stand beside you because standing beside you required growth, accountability, and honesty with herself. And that was too heavy a weight for her to carry. So instead, she chose the easier path. She betrayed you. She turned her back on loyalty because it demanded more of her than she was willing to give. And here's the cruelest part, she didn't betray you because you weren't enough, she betrayed you because you were too much. Too consistent. Too grounded. Too unshakable. Those qualities should have been a blessing, but to someone unwilling to rise, they became a burden. You didn't demand perfection, you simply lived by a standard. And the very presence of that standard revealed everything she was refusing to work on. That's what pushed her to rebel. Instead of walking with you, she looked for escape. Instead of honoring the hand that built with her, she bit it. Because in her mind, destruction was easier than construction. Betrayal was easier than growth. This is where the wound cuts deepest. You weren't betrayed because you failed her. You were betrayed because she failed herself, and she couldn't stand to watch you keep succeeding while she stayed the same. That's the part that leaves a man hollow, the realization that love wasn't enough to keep her loyal. Because loyalty requires courage, and courage is something she never built. When a man first feels the sting of betrayal, his instinct is to blame himself. You replay every moment in your head, searching for where you slipped, where you failed, what you could have done differently. That self-interrogation is natural, but it's also dangerous, because it traps you in a cycle of guilt that doesn't belong to you. The truth is, you cannot love someone into loyalty. You cannot give enough to erase their insecurities. You cannot carry a person who refuses to walk beside you. Betrayal doesn't come because you lacked, it comes because they lacked, and instead of confronting that, they projected it onto you. The real power is in what you choose after the wound. A man can let it harden him into bitterness, or he can let it sharpen him into wisdom. Walking away isn't weakness, it's mastery. It's the quiet recognition that your value was never diminished by her actions. Her betrayal didn't lower your worth, it revealed her limits. And once you see it that way, you stop bleeding for people who cut you. This is where dignity becomes your greatest weapon. Not chasing. Not pleading. Not explaining. Just silence. Just presence. Just moving forward with the same discipline and strength that made you who you are. That silence unsettles more than anger ever could, because it forces her to confront the reality that she no longer has access to you. In the end, betrayal is a teacher. It shows you who deserves your loyalty and who never did. And when you rise from it, not bitter, but sharper, calmer, more unshakable, you step into a version of yourself that no betrayal can break. That is the true victory, not that she lost you, but that you found yourself. Healing after betrayal is not about proving anything to her, it's about reclaiming yourself. The danger most men fall into is letting the wound define them. They carry the bitterness into every future connection, letting suspicion poison what could have been something real. But that's not healing, that's living in chains. True healing is when you no longer need answers from her, no longer need apologies, no longer need closure. Because the moment you demand those things, you're still giving her control over your peace. Real strength is when you can look at the damage, accept that it happened, and refuse to let it dictate who you become. This process isn't instant. At first, silence feels heavy. The absence of her presence will echo, and the mind will crave old habits. But every time you resist the urge to chase, every time you choose calm over reaction, you're building a new foundation within yourself. That's where self-respect grows, in the space where you refuse to bend for someone who broke you. And slowly, the weight shifts. The pain that once made you doubt yourself starts to transform into clarity. You see that her betrayal wasn't the end of your story, it was the start of your rebirth. And here's the truth, nothing unsettles a betrayer more than your peace. When you rise without bitterness, when you glow without their validation, when you succeed without their support, you force them to face the one thing they never wanted to see, the reality that they lost someone who never needed them. That's the power of healing, turning betrayal into fuel, silence into strength, and loss into the exact fire that forges the man you were always meant to be. There comes a point when you stop looking back. Not because you've forgotten what happened, but because you've outgrown it. The betrayal that once haunted you becomes a chapter, not the whole book. You stop asking why she did it. You stop searching for logic in actions born out of weakness. Instead, you accept the truth, some people are simply not meant to walk with you to the heights you're climbing. And that's not a loss, it's protection. Because carrying the wrong person any further would have only weighed you down. This is where transformation takes root. The silence that once felt like punishment now feels like peace. The emptiness that once felt unbearable now feels like freedom. You begin to see that walking away wasn't just survival, it was evolution. You didn't just leave her behind, you left behind the version of yourself that tolerated betrayal, that doubted his worth, that gave too much to someone who gave too little. And as you rise into this new version of yourself, something powerful happens, your energy shifts. You no longer chase. You no longer explain. You no longer beg to be understood. You move with calm certainty, and that certainty is magnetic. It draws the right people in and silently warns the wrong ones away. The beauty of betrayal is that it forces you into a kind of rebirth. Pain strips you down, but it also rebuilds you stronger than before. And when you look back, not with anger but with gratitude, you realize she didn't break you, she revealed you. She exposed the strength you didn't know you had. And that strength is the foundation on which you now stand, unshakable, untouchable, and free. The most powerful shift after betrayal is when you no longer see it as a curse, but as a filter. Life has a way of removing people who were never truly aligned with your path, even if it hurts in the moment. What felt like loss was really clarity. She showed you who she was, and though it cut deep, it also freed you from building a future on quicksand. You can't construct something lasting with someone who runs when tested, who folds when challenged, who betrays when loyalty is required. So instead of mourning what could have been, you begin to appreciate that the truth came out early enough to save you from greater destruction down the line. In that realization, your perspective changes. You stop seeing yourself as the victim of betrayal and start seeing yourself as the beneficiary of revelation. The betrayal no longer defines you, it refines you. It teaches you where to place your trust, how to guard your energy, and what kind of loyalty you deserve. And with that clarity, your standards rise. You no longer tolerate half-love, half-truths, or half-commitments. You demand the same discipline and strength from others that you demand from yourself. This is not about bitterness. It's not about closing yourself off. It's about moving forward with eyes wide open. Betrayal hardened you, but it also sharpened you. Now, instead of fearing loss, you embrace it as part of the process. You understand that anyone who cannot walk with you in truth does not deserve to walk with you at all. And that is the gift hidden within the wound, the realization that what left you was never yours to keep, and what is meant for you will never betray you.